Hello and welcome everyone to our really exciting conversation today as a part of Netroots Nation about the care economy. Care can't wait. We are a rising movement for transformative change, and we're super excited because we have an amazing group of panelists here for this conversation to talk about the care economy and what's at stake for all of us in the Build Back Better agenda's caregiving investments. We have with us today Fatima Goss-Graves of the National Women's Law Center. Hey, Fatima. We have Kristen Raufinkbeiner from Moms Rising, Supermom. We have Dawn Huckelbridge from Paid Leave for All. Hey, Dawn. And we have Nicole Jorwick of the ARC of the United States. And my name is Ai-jen Poo. I'm the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance and Caring Across Generations. And it's actually been one of the greatest honors of my life to work alongside these incredible women and a circle of other incredible leaders in the Care Can't Wait Coalition. We are advocates for paid family and medical leave, childcare, and home and community-based services for older adults and people with disabilities, and for care workers. And we've come together because we have this historic generational opportunity to support our families to take care of one another while strengthening the economy as a whole through winning big investments in our caregiving programs, policies, and our care workforce. So we're going to dive in because there's no time to waste. Care can't wait, and we want to talk about it. So let's start with you, Fatima. When we say care infrastructure or care economy, what exactly do we mean? You're on mute, my love. Uh-oh. All right. Well, we can go to you.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. So when we say that care is infrastructure, it always has been infrastructure, but it's only recently that we've had policymakers and leaders and everyday people recognizing it. And that's true whether we're talking about childcare or home and community-based services or paid leave. It is something that bridges the ability for people to actually work and for families and communities to be stable. And in the pandemic, when care infrastructure totally fell apart and crumbled, everyone was very aware that our ability to work and our ability for our families to thrive were absolutely linked with care at the center. The last point that I want to make about it is that it's not an accident that we haven't had infrastructure language to describe it before. I think it's precisely because the majority of care workers are women, mostly Black and brown women, and it has long been work that has been underpaid or totally free because of our mechanisms and slavery and history, and because there's a whole bunch of invisible work that women do around this country that we've never assigned any value to.
Totally agree. And it's so important to have that context as we talk about this moment in particular. Can you say a little bit, Dawn, about this moment, like what we are talking about in terms of investing in a strong care infrastructure? What difference would it make for everyday families and specifically in terms of the policies that you're working on?
It would make all the difference in the world. I'm the director of Paid Leave for All, so I know the most about paid leave, but of course believe that all of these pieces are interlinked, that we need all of them. We can and must finally have all of them and pass them in the package that's coming up. But in terms of paid leave, it would mean health for babies, health for parents, health for our aging loved ones and those with disabilities, for whole communities, for public health. It would mean lower transmission rates of disease, of viruses, and it would mean economic security. We know right now that families lose $22.5 billion a year because of a lack of paid leave. We know that 1 in 5 retirees left the workforce before they were ready because they needed to care for a loved one. We know that 1 in 4 people who give birth go back to work within 2 weeks. So this is just entirely unsustainable, and paid leave and other policies would provide that sense of security. You wouldn't have to live in fear of a diagnosis. You wouldn't worry that you might be evicted if something happened, if there was a transition or something unexpected and a tragedy in your life. This would just be extra comfort and security. And along those lines, it would make us happier. I think all of these policies give us that security and also are about why we do the work in the first place. It's to be there for the people that we love and care for.
That's right. That's so helpful. It's both not just a nice to have, it's a must have. And in some instances we've seen, especially in COVID, it's like a life and death. And it's also about enabling a quality of life that includes more time with the people that we love and enabling us to show up for the people that we love, which seems so basic and fundamental. Kristen,
I was going to say, and something we should have certainly learned from the last couple of years, right?
That's right. Exactly right. Well, so let's talk about what we've learned and what the current state of play is and what we still need to do. Kristen, talk to us about where we are. Everybody knows that this group and many others are pushing around the country. And then there's kind of media snippets here and there about negotiations in Congress. Where exactly are we right now?
Well, first, we are in a state of emergency. The data is in, and the pandemic has had an outsized impact on women and moms, with women of color experiencing compounded health and economic harms. We're facing a care infrastructure that was unraveling before the pandemic began and has now unraveled altogether. A full 32% of women who were pushed out of the labor force were pushed out of the labor force specifically because they didn't have access to childcare. And we also see the negative impacts of our inability to create so far a paid family medical leave program like every other nation in the world except 2 have, as well as a home and community-based services effectively produced in a program for people with disabilities and people who are aging, and a care workforce that has living wages. So this is a crisis that we face. This is an opportunity for change, though. We are in a moment where we are standing on the precipice of transformational change that will lift our economy, that will lift our country. Congress right now in the reconciliation package is seriously considering all of these policies, which are part of Joe Biden's American Families Plan and American Jobs Plan, and are part of the Build Back Better agenda. This is separate, however, and unfortunately, from the bipartisan infrastructure package. And so what is at risk right now is for all of these policies that lift our economy, that lift our families, that lift our businesses, that lift our country, and that together, and by together, I mean we need to keep these policies together, will increase our GDP by at least 10 to 15 basis points. We have the maximum gain to our country, to our economy, to our businesses when these policies pass together. But we are also most at risk because these policies have long been siloed, pushed under the carpet, pushed away, and not on the center table for discussion of having our policies be pushed out again. So I hope everybody who's with us right now will immediately, after we're done with this panel, call their member of Congress and tell them CARE can't wait, because decisions are being made as we're having this panel. So you can text CARE to 747-464 and be connected to your House member, or text We Care to 747-464 and be connected to your U.S. Senator. And this is critical. This is literally happening right now, and this is in danger right now of not happening. So your voice is really important right now. And thank you for asking that question, Jen.
No, it's so helpful. And can you say those numbers one more time?
People can text CARE, the word CARE, to 747-464 and be connected with their U.S. House member, or they can text We Care, one word, We Care, to 747-464 and be connected to their U.S. senators.
Thank you, Kristen. There's a whole bunch in what you said that's really important. And I think parsing out what is the bipartisan infrastructure bill, what is Build Back Better, especially when we've heard American Jobs Plan, American Families Plan, like there's just a lot of different frames out there. But what we are talking about with both the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill is the president's vision, right? One vision for how we rebuild the economy. And it's incomplete without the care agenda, which is in the Build Back Better plan, right? And so let's talk about it, right? I think that there's an assumption out there that the jobs piece, like the real economic rebuilding piece, is in the bipartisan infrastructure plan. But actually, the Build Back Better agenda, the whole, is really also about jobs. And I feel like that's a really important piece, especially when we look at the care agenda, where that's so clear, but it's not being really reported in the media that way. And Nicole, I'm wondering if you can break down for us how the care agenda in Build Back Better is actually a jobs agenda.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's been frustrating to see that aspect of the care infrastructure is not being seen for what it is, because the Build Back Better will be an immediate job creator with the long overdue investment in childcare and Medicaid home and community-based services, millions of jobs for new childcare workers and direct care workers who support people with disabilities and aging adults. That will be on day one. But also with these service systems shored up, and the reason that we all are working to keep these issues aligned is that we also need paid leave for all, so that when things come up, and people know that they need to support their children or other loved ones, that they can return to work knowing that that's there. And also with a system with well-paid, that's very important. It's not just funding for new childcare jobs and direct care jobs. It's good, well-paying, family-sustaining wages, benefits for those workers as well. That also is peace of mind with that paid leave for returning workers. And with those systems shored up, it's peace of mind to return to work, which means millions of family caregivers can also return to work. That's return to work or go to work, because a lot of people haven't been, we obviously are talking a lot about the pandemic, and that's really important, but also there's millions of people who've just been staying home because they didn't have that support. And so we know that security, that their loved ones will be safe, and so are their jobs. And so that's really why it's going to be a job creator, both for the new jobs, but also for the family caregivers who can return to work.
Right, exactly. And that's for everyone. Family caregivers are people of all races, all classes, all genders, all generations, and they need these programs in order to return to work, right? In order for those jobs numbers to go up. And especially women who disproportionately carry the load of caregiving. The fact that the jobs report came out, and we're seeing that women continue to lose jobs in our economy, even as we continue to add jobs. And the bipartisan infrastructure bill alone, 90% of those jobs will go to men, right? This is where we build back better for women and jobs that will be available for women. In fact, this represents the largest direct investment in good job creation for women and women of color in the history of the United States. Big deal. And if we don't do it, also a big deal and a big fail. But this seems really obvious, right? That this is something we need to do. Fatima, talk to us about why we are in this position of having to fight for our lives around this bill and keeping the caregiving components alive in this bill. Why is it such a fight?
And before I get to the why, there was something that Nicole said that I wanted to add to, if it's okay, because I was thinking about how we got into this problem around childcare in the first place, right? Like long before the pandemic, there were wide swaths of the country, both urban and rural, where people described them as childcare deserts, where it was nearly impossible for people who needed childcare to find it. And one of the key reasons is because of how poorly we have paid childcare workers historically. And so the fact that the Build Back Better plan acknowledges that one of the pathways to ensuring we have a more stable childcare infrastructure is by ensuring that they are paid more wages is so important, because we lost a lot of child care providers in this pandemic who have gone on to other things where they can make more. It's not that they don't want to do this work. This is passion work, love work. But if you pay someone wages that don't allow them to sustain themselves and their families, you are literally running yourselves into a box. But I think the reason why folks are having trouble squaring why an investment in our care infrastructure should go alongside an investment in our physical infrastructure is just we have not usually talked about it in these terms. We have usually had in economic jobs plans, infrastructure plans that have been targeted to advancing jobs where men dominate, and that has been an okay strategy. So this is not the first time a major jobs vehicle has been created where 90% of the jobs would go to men. The big difference here is that we're in the midst of what, our friend Nicole Mason has coined as she-cession. We are in a situation where the vast majority of jobs were lost by women. And so we have gone back to 1988 levels in terms of women's participation in the workplace. That's an embarrassment. And so to get out of that, it is causing us to look at some of the underlying and long-standing reasons why we're in this situation in the first place. And that requires investing deeply in the jobs where women are, but it also requires getting at that fundamental harder thing, which is the idea that a stable care infrastructure is actually necessary for anyone to work.
That's right.
No matter your job.
That's right. Exactly. And I think that most voters actually understand this because every poll that ever happens shows these policies pulling through the roof. So this is not only smart policy and not only the right thing to do from an equity and moral standpoint, but it's also politically really, really powerful. These are winning issues. So what's at stake? Talk to us, Dawn, about 2022. We're coming up on a really important election year, midterm elections, really everything on the line. How does this agenda figure in to what is possible or what the threats are in 2022?
Yes, I want to say one quick thing about the jobs point too as well, which is that actually when you're talking about, the hard infrastructure bill is often called the jobs bill, and ours is called the Build Back Better is called the families bill. They're the one and the same. And actually, there's been a study that the Build Back Better agenda would yield twice as many jobs as the hard infrastructure, as the infrastructure bill. And they would be longer lasting jobs. So it's absurd. And we want to be clear that this is not just about families. It is, but it is about our economy. And these investments we know together would yield millions of jobs, billions in wages, and trillions in GDP. So we can't let this moment pass us by. And on that note,
yes, dichotomy too, isn't it? That things that are about families aren't about jobs.
Yeah. So yes, this is an important moment, as you were saying, Aijen. It's an important moment for policy and for politics, and women are watching. We'll be in election season before we know it. This is a once in a generation opportunity for all of these policies for the US to finally catch up with the rest of the world. And there is not going to be a real lasting recovery. There is not going to be rebuilding at all if you don't include care in this package. And there are political implications. We've done it, Paid Leave for All Action, all kinds of polls, as you were saying, Aijen. These are politically winning issues, and there will be a cost. So we hope that everyone on the Hill is listening right now. We hope everyone listening is going to activate call your elected officials and make sure that they are supporting these policies in the package and they're moving it along. Because yes, we're going to be in election season before we know it. And also we don't know what's going to happen. And we have to seize this moment right now.
We absolutely do. Kristen, what are your thoughts about 2022 and how the CARE agenda is going to fit in here?
In order to inspire women voters across the country to turn out and vote, we absolutely have to pass the Build Back Better agenda. And that means the full agenda: paid family medical leave, home and community-based services for people who are aging and people with disabilities. And it also means childcare for everyone. And too often these policies are getting pitted against each other. But guess what? Voters across the country know that these policies are interrelated. They know that only 20% of people, only 8% of low-wage workers have access to some form of paid family medical leave. Yet everyone who is having a baby right now is having a baby too often with their own personal fiscal cliff. If you have a baby and you don't have enough funds for that bridge moment of a gap in your pay, and then you have to pay for infant childcare, which, by the way, most child care facilities don't take infants under 6 weeks of age, and childcare costs more than college and is particularly expensive for infants. And then also, if we don't have a system for home and community-based services, and importantly, very importantly, for living wages for care workers, we have an outright disaster. The moms, the dads, the caregivers of our nation, they know this. They know that these policies are tied together. Our elected leaders absolutely need to show that they know this too. And they need to show that they know this by voting to pass the reconciliation package without eviscerating any of the care infrastructure priorities. We see this in the polling data. We hear this every day at Moms Rising. And we know that to inspire people to vote, to keep people voting, to keep people involved in democracy, we have to deliver on what our country needs. The good news is delivering on this does boost our economy, does boost families, does boost businesses, and it really helps public health. You know, we're, again, one of the only 2 countries in the world without paid family medical leave program. Many countries have far better child care programs. And our Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, recently said that it is hurting our international competitiveness, that we are so far behind the rest of the world. So we have all the right reasons to do this, including that these policies are both job enabling and job creating, including that just like we need to build bridges and roads to drive on to go to work, we need to build a care infrastructure so parents can work, children can thrive, and care workers can earn living wages. And like Dawn said, just like these policies actually produce twice as much jobs as the bipartisan infrastructure package, of which 90% of those jobs are going to men. All of the right reasons to do this. And we need to make sure that we call our members of Congress and tell them that in order to inspire us to vote for them, they need to vote for us. And voting for us means voting for the care infrastructure and the reconciliation package.
That's right, sure does. And folks, I don't know if you know this, but we should be really surprised and excited that Nicole Jorwick is actually awake and standing on the screen, because she has just come to us straight from a 24-hour vigil where she was, along with a whole beautiful coalition of people, reading the stories of thousands of people who submitted their stories about why care can't wait and why investing in the care infrastructure is literally a life and death issue for so many people. And Nicole, I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit about that, how that action went, and some of the kinds of stories that were shared, including your own brother. I think it was just such a beautiful and powerful event, and really kind of like it helps to create a different story. This is not about numbers. This is all we hear about in the media is like trillions, billions, this data point, that data point. But at the end of the day, this is about human lives, human beings, the people that we love. And I feel like the vigil really brought that home. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, and thank you. Yes, that's why I'm a little bit sunburned, but it was a really moving experience because it's about the stories. I mean, it's about the people, Aijen, to your point. And I always tell anyone who's advocating that you don't have to be like any of these beautiful ladies on the screen that are experts on any particular issue. The only thing you have to be an expert on is the story and how these policy issues impact your life. And so all of us, because unfortunately we're operating in this time when it doesn't seem like, because we're all worried, and that's because it doesn't seem like when push comes to shove that everyone's pushing for all three of these issues, and we need to keep the care infrastructure in. And so in a moment of panic, we did come together and kind of throw this together by the skin of our teeth in a few days. But it was really inspiring to see so many people coming together, and you had all these direct care, home care and direct care workers coming, and just like what Fatima was saying about childcare workers, this is a historically underpaid workforce made up predominantly of women of color, and they're recognizing they don't always hear about the stories of people who've been on waiting lists for Medicaid home and community-based services for a decade, but they're hearing those stories as they're being read out. And also you have people with disabilities who sometimes, frankly, there can be some tension because of complex policy issues that I won't talk about now, but there was a real understanding of why these things have to ride together, that we can't create more access to services without addressing the wage issue, without making sure that these are workers that do also have benefits, so that because oftentimes if they're calling out, it's because they need to provide some care, and it's a vicious cycle how all of these things come together. I was also able to share my brother's story. I'm also a family caregiver. I have a brother who has autism, and he also in his story and his remarks talked about how he's lucky to have services in a state with a 20,000 person waiting list. He's in Illinois, and also how we have to do this for people with disabilities, but also for the. And the best part about the HCBS vigil was that at the end, we got to also talk about all of our issues and do a little photo shoot in front of the Capitol, because there were petitions of 4.5 million people supporting all of these issues. And so we had a representation after this vigil, after 24 long hours. So I don't necessarily look my best personally, but I was so happy to be part of it, because just because we were sharing HCBS stories, we were making sure that we were also talking about all these issues, because it's all interconnected. And someone, I can't remember who, because, but someone brought up how this is all interdependent. And I think that that's such an important and accurate word. And it's why I've been so grateful, and why I think we've been so powerful working together.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Nicole. It was such a moving action, and I know people were inspired across the country, and also really felt like their voices were being carried and heard, which is so rare and so essential right now, because decisions about the future of our country are being made like literally any minute now. And I will say, though, that I know a lot of organizers and activists tune in to sorry, I can't speak. Tune in to this conference every year. And one thing that we anticipated in our coalition was that our issues of caregiving would be pitted against each other, that childcare, paid leave, and home care would be pitted against each other, because women can't have all the things. We never can have all the things. We can only have one thing. Or because we are always told that it's a zero sum, and it's just not the case, and it's a false choice here. And this coalition is about making real and embodying that we will not succumb to a zero-sum politics or false choices when it comes to the future of our economy, the future of our families, and equity. So I wonder, Fatima, if you could talk to us a little bit about the dynamic. Like, how do we resist the zero-sum pitting against of our issues, and what does it look like to have a different kind of politics in this time, to make a different set of choices?
Yeah, Nicole said you guys came together in a moment of panic, and I saw it as coming together in a moment of power, because I I actually think the pathway through is sticking together and reminding again and again both that families don't divide their lives in this way, that I'd rather have one part of my care needs taken care of than the other. Our businesses, frankly, aren't thinking about it in this way. They understand that care is what is interrupting their ability to continue to thrive. And so we have to reject this zero sum nonsense. We have to reject the idea that we can't invest in it all. And I will add, it's not just that we have to reject the idea that we can't do right by our care infrastructure. We can both invest in care and invest in our physical infrastructure. In fact, our physical infrastructure plan will be doomed if we do not have it accompany a care infrastructure investment. And so I actually think that is the thing. If people are going to make a phone call and remind their senators or their members of the House of one thing, is that you expect them not to do business as usual. You expect them to take care of the major needs around physical infrastructure and the major needs around care, and that you're not allowing them to trade off families.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of people have said this is like a new deal moment, right? Of a moment where it's the kind of moment that'll go down in the history books where big things happen. And Dawn, I'd love for you to talk about what does that look like? Because it's a different type of political courage that is required in a moment of transformation than in a moment of technocratic incrementalism, right? This is like we are in a moment where we are going to make a great leap forward in this country. It means I'm assuming it means we need a different kind of political courage. What does that look like?
I mean, I think it's just the most amazing opportunity. And I hope that our elected officials feel that way too, that clearly something we should have learned from not just the last 2 years, I should say, what we're still going through. We are still in a pandemic. We're still in a crisis. We should have learned that the status quo was not serving us. It wasn't working. It wasn't working for a lot of us, and it's not sustainable. And so this is an opportunity to address some of the greatest challenges coming to a head in our lifetimes. And actually, I was just listening to a speech. Senator Schumer came to a rally that we did this summer. And the way he said it is, we always say a once in a generation opportunity. He says, this is a moment. It comes around, at least, at most every 50 years. And he said, let it not pass us by. And I think that this is such an opportunity for our leaders, for Congress, to do something transformational. As I said, the way it will transform the economy, the implications for racial and gender equity. I mean, this will have ripple effects across the country in ways that we don't even know yet, in terms of letting more women and people of color into positions of power to feel more financially secure. It will help families, frankly, survive. It will help our economy grow. It will bring us into the future of work, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I think it will make us, as I said, a much happier country. This is about security and prosperity. And I really, really hope Congress is listening, that this is a mandate. This is a moment they must meet.
It absolutely is. And Netroots, y'all, we delivered this moment, right? Our votes, our organizing, our activism created the context for this moment of political and policy transformation. And I just think about all the moms, Kristen, in your organization. Actually, I think it's really important that we take a second here, because in the COVID environment, it's really hard for anything to break through in the media or otherwise. And there has been so much incredible work. I mean, so many people at Netroots were a part of delivering a historic victory in 2020 and again in the Senate runoffs. But the moment that we're in now of this year-long sprint to try to get to this agenda and realize the potential of this moment for policy transformation, we haven't stopped, and the moms haven't stopped, right? Kristen, tell us about what Moms Rising members have been doing. It's incredible.
It is incredibly humbling to be in movement with all of you and all of our over 1 million members, because people are so busy. Moms have been fueling our economy. Moms have been serving as healthcare workers and disproportionately impacted by health impacts of serving as healthcare workers, particularly before the vaccine was available. Moms have been having to be school teachers. Moms have been doing so many things at the same time. And I want to just share with you, there's not just 1, 2, or 3 moms in the United States of America. 86% of women in America have moms by the time they're 44 years old. And of course, in our movement, anyone with a belly button is invited, of all genders, who's doing caregiving. And so as people are doing caregiving, they are taking time to share their stories. Over 11,500 people have shared their stories with Moms Rising about how these issues impact their lives. Because oftentimes in Congress, our Congress right now, frankly, does not represent or reflect who we are as a nation. And many people who are serving in Congress have never had to grapple with not having access to paid family medical leave, of not having access to childcare, of not having access to home and community-based services. So sharing our stories, as Nicole was sharing, just happened with the vigil on the Hill, and sharing our stories on Twitter, sharing our stories directly with members of Congress, sharing our stories in all the ways that we can is so powerful. And I thank everybody who's been doing that. Keep it up. Moms Rising members have taken over 800,000 constituent contacts just to help move forward this package. They've held mini parades. They've held flying kite events to get the press there and to talk about how we can make our families and our economy soar. They've been making phone calls. We were just talking about texting CARE to 747-464 to be connected directly right now. Yes, please do, with your member of Congress. They've been doing meetings with members of Congress. They have put together a book of stories with us and hand delivered that in over 350 congressional districts across the country, in local offices in cities across the state. They've done over 371 congressional districts with letters to the editor. So I'm here to say that we, all of us together, what I'm talking about with Moms Rising is the tip of the iceberg. There are dozens of organizations involved in Care Can't Wait. All of our organizations have memberships that are rising together, that are reaching out to Congress, that are reaching out to the media, that are making our voices heard. And we're sharing something very important. And that is that when this many people are experiencing the same types of crisis at the same time, we don't have an epidemic of personal failures, as these policy areas are commonly framed. We instead have national structural issues that we can and we must solve together. And the message you're hearing from all of us right now is that when we do solve these issues together, what happens is we lift our economy, we lift our families, we lift our public health, we lift our businesses. Countries with these policies in place have significantly lower COVID fatality rates and significantly lower maternal and infant mortality rates as well. We're talking about saving lives. Businesses in states where we have these policies in place, they have higher retention, higher performance, and lower retraining and recruitment costs. And importantly, they can compete against other businesses, because what this program for paid family medical leave does is it makes the burden, so to speak, of paying for the time out shift to be more of a social insurance program and off the individual business. This is not an unfunded mandate. That's a common myth. This is really lifting businesses as well. And we see also taxpayers have savings. In the state of California, where paid family medical leave has been the norm for many years, there's a 40% lower need for SNAP and for TANF. And so what we're seeing is cost savings, business lifting, life-saving programs. And together we know that we can make this happen. So this is just a key moment of opportunity. You can tell that I'm fired up, I'm ready to go. And I'm just so thankful. And I just want to say a giant thank you, because I know at Netroots, there's a lot of people who have been taking action. A lot of people went the extra mile to vote. A lot of people have been making those extra phone calls. Everything you do is adding up. You're not alone. There's a movement behind you. No matter what organization you're in, when you are taking action, when you're rising, when you're part of democracy, your voice is being heard and you're having an impact. So thank you, thank you, thank you. B, double down. Right now, for real, we are not sort of exaggerating when we say these policies are on the line right now, this minute, this very hour. Please double down right now and take action again. Share your story again, call again, reach out again, and reach out and be engaged with the organizations that you're engaged with right now. If they're asking for help, they really mean it. This is the moment.
This is the moment. And do you hear an echo? A little bit.
Oh, it's better.
Oh, great. Okay. So this is the moment, and this is also personal. This isn't just our work, our passion. This is like really about what's at stake for each of us and our families. And I would just love to do a round with everyone on this panel about how this is personal to you. What is your personal care story? Starting with you, Fatima.
You know, both of my grandmothers were domestic workers, and they cared for families in their homes. And the idea that we are talking about an investment that would allow for dignity, wages, and support, I feel like is a real testament, not just for the folks who are working today, but a reminder of all of the generations who are behind us, pushing us forward. It's part of why I do this work. But in this pandemic, my own care infrastructure fell apart, like so many people in this country. And that was true for everyone I worked with. That was true for everyone I knew. And I cannot help but think that the lesson that we have learned these last 18 months around the invisible work that we all did, the supports that are actually necessary to thrive, we cannot lose those lessons. So whether it is for my little boys who were struggling with me as mom and teacher and was not good at holding down both of those, or the wonderful caregivers in my life that helped me hold it down today, I have real gratitude and will not stop fighting for them and for all of us.
Beautiful. How about you, Nicole? Can we go to you next?
Yes. I already shared that my brother Chris has autism. So the lack of an HCBS infrastructure, but also of a care infrastructure generally has definitely hit home. I talk a lot about how the services matter to my brother and how direct care workers and not having enough of them, let alone he's lost dozens of workers because they can get a better pay at Costco or somewhere else for much less strenuous jobs. And they cry when they're leaving because they really help him participate in the world, communicate, just things that are really matter and are important. But also I have a paid leave story that I don't necessarily talk about all the time, which is that my brother a few years ago broke his leg. And because him and I help him with communicating pretty well, not that others in my family can't, but I happen to be home. And so I needed to take some time off, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't necessarily covered. That might be different now in our organization, but it's just something that impacts all of us. It doesn't matter if it's something that could impact you tomorrow. And so whether it's paid leave or the need for childcare, which is something that I don't have children yet myself, but something that I hear about from my colleagues, but also from my friends, and the real stress and strain on people just for doing day-to-day things because of not having this support and not having this infrastructure. And also as a former direct care worker myself, the wages for all of these workforces need to go up. And all of those things together are what keeps me going. And those individual stories that I am lucky to hear, and obviously also working with all of you and all the amazing advocates and individuals that we have on here today are what's going to get us over the finish line. And I really do believe we're going to win on all of these issues because we have to.
That's right. We absolutely do. Dawn, you're up.
So I often say when I start my paid leave story, I say I was one of the lucky ones. And it still really almost broke me. And I think even though I'd studied gender and policy most of my life and worked in it, I don't think it was till I had a child that I really realized how hard this country is on families and caregivers. I was able to piece together not a lot of dedicated family leave, but some paid time off, which is not what we should have to do. I used every vacation day, every sick day, and got a couple of months. But my son luckily he was healthy and I was pretty healthy, but he had really, really bad colic. And if any of you listening have ever had a baby with really, really bad colic, God bless you, because it meant basically I didn't sleep for a year. And it meant I had to be holding him. I had to be standing. He usually wouldn't let me eat. So if I ate anything, it was like a bite while I was walking. And then he just needed to be nursed so much, no matter what we, did or tried sleep training or whatever. So I couldn't stop losing weight. I was really ill. It was really, really mentally hard. And what I kept thinking, though, the whole time is here I have this wildly supportive family. I have a job. I have healthcare. And it's still this hard. And I thought, what if I hadn't had paid leave at all? A reporter asked me that. What if you didn't have any paid leave? And it took the breath out of me. If I'd had none at all, I don't know what I would have done. And I know that my experience is so much luckier than so many families in this country. And I honestly do not know how we do it. I don't know how they do it. So that was one of the things that inspired me to this work.
It shouldn't be about luck. This is not a question of luck. These are basic fundamental needs that are so long overdue. And frankly, the fact that we don't have them is inflicting cruel and unusual punishment on people who are actually just trying to take care of their families and participate in the economy. It's insane. Kristen, are you up for sharing your personal story?
Yeah. So I too had a wake-up call when my son was born with a primary immune deficiency, and I didn't have any access to paid family medical leave. And I was raised by a single mom. And in that moment, I reflected on what would have happened if my mom experienced that moment. Here too, luck was what allowed me to continue to raise my son, to get him access to healthcare, because my spouse had job-linked healthcare and could continue working while I was pushed out of the labor force and lost my job-linked healthcare. I had never planned to be pushed out of the labor force, particularly being raised by a single mom who really said, never rely on anybody else to put the roof over your head or food on the table for your children. So my plan did not include not working. And here, luck determined that we were able to get him, my son, the medical care to allow him to now be a thriving young adult. But this is a ridiculous situation. I can't tell you how angry it makes me. It makes my hair light on fire, smoke come out of my ears, because 1 in 4 women in the United States of America have to go back to work within 2 weeks of giving birth. That is not enough time to recover. That's not enough time to bond. That's not enough time to have breastfeeding established. And many people, we hear stories at Moms Rising all the time who are being pushed back to work while their children, their babies, are still in the neonatal intensive care unit, just hanging on by a thread. But they have to be back at work, not even fully recovered yet, because there is no paid family medical leave in the United States of America. This also is the case when you look at childcare. People are being pushed out of the labor force because childcare is costing more than people are earning. And we see all these signs up, potentially, no matter where you live, depending on where you live, asking for jobs opening. And people are like, why can't people fill these jobs? Well, we can't fill these jobs because childcare costs more than college. Our system is broken. Similarly, I was lucky to be able to, later in my life, have paid family medical leave when my mom was struggling with brain cancer and we lost her. I was able to be there. It makes me cry still to this time, but I was able to be there with her in those moments that matter, those moments that we will never get back, those moments that are a big part of my whole life, because I later had access to paid family medical leave. So I have both a story of no paid family medical leave and a story of having paid family medical leave. And the clear thing that I think, Ijen, you were talking about, that Dawn was talking about, that I'm talking about, is you shouldn't have to win the boss lottery. You shouldn't have to win the geography lottery. You shouldn't have to be lucky in order to be able to thrive and survive. Because we are talking about survival. Infant and maternal mortality rates are going up in the United States of America. We're the only country of all the industrialized nations, according to the World Health Organization, where maternal and infant mortality is going up instead of down because we lack these policies. So thank you for asking about my story. I actually don't often share it, but I'm so thankful to have had those eye-opening moments, and really to have that moment to say, this situation that I experienced when I had a new child who had a health crisis, if that had happened to my own mother, who was a single mom, it would have been an outright catastrophe. So that luck was key to our being here today, and that shouldn't be the way it is in our country. And it doesn't have to be. Every other country has figured this out. Literally, I know I've said this. This is now the third time I've said this, but this makes me annoyed. Every other country except 2 have figured this out. We can also. It's long past time. Nancy Pelosi recently said that childcare almost passed 50 years ago. We've been waiting, fighting, pushing 50 years. So this, again, is a call to action to everybody who's participating, everybody who's listening, everybody who's staying involved. I know you're already involved because you're at Netroots Nation. I know you're leaders because you're here. And we are just really telling you right now, we need your help to turbocharge, to double down, to stand up, to speak louder to your members of Congress, to tell them that care can't wait, absolutely can't wait any longer.
That's right. I feel like in the course of the last hour or so of our conversation, I've gone through so many emotions of like rage and fury and hope and inspiration. And right, that's what this work is. And I'm really glad that you mentioned Speaker Pelosi's comment, because it's a reminder of how much has gone into getting us to this moment, which should also remind us of just how important it is that we actually deliver. That this cannot wait another generation, another 50 years. Can you imagine? No, we cannot. So I think it's both like the discipline of continuing the fight and the discipline of staying hopeful. And we're in this like home stretch, right? And so just in our last 3 minutes, if we could get a final go around of parting words to support the Netroots community in the discipline of staying in motion at this critical time and of staying hopeful. And I'm going to start with you, Fatima.
I have to say, I have never in my time felt this close to winning big in this way. And when you are so close, you can almost touch it. When you are on the cusp of a transformational investment that you know will change people's lives, it can get pretty dicey. And that is exactly when we double down. We double down when we're on the cusp of winning. We double down when we start to hear the sort of politicos try to tell us that maybe you won't win. And we double down just at the moment when our leaders need that win to help push it through. This is this moment. This is the moment to pick up the phone, to make the call you've been wondering if it's time to make. Right now is the moment. And so grateful for this community for doing this sort of work to get us to this period.
Beautiful. Nicole.
Yes, I mean, obviously advocate with your legislators, but also with friends, with colleagues, making sure that they understand why some of the issues that we talked about here, whether it's access to childcare, paid leave, Medicaid, home and community-based services, it's really important that everybody understands, because all of those individuals that you can influence in your circle of influence can also reach out to their legislators. So make sure that we keep talking about these issues, because we are on the precipice of something major, and Congress needs to feel the pressure. And long term, it's really important what we all learned when we all started to come together is that we can't get stuck in the scarcity mentality. We have to build big tables and be inclusive because we're stronger together. So Fatima's point, you're right. We have to build big tables and work together so that we can build big power. And I think we can, and I think we will.
Kristen, and then I'm going to give Dawn the last word.
Well, plus 1,000 to everything that everybody's already said, especially that if you've been hesitating about if now's the moment to make a call, don't hesitate anymore. As Fatima said, now is the moment to really double down. This is potentially a once in a generation opportunity to lift our families, our communities, our economy, our country. And we cannot let it pass us by. And this is also an opportunity to save our democracy. Because when we bring through these policies for a win, paid family medical leave, childcare, home and community-based services, that's what voters are going to remember when they go to vote at the ballot in the upcoming elections, not just the next elections, but many elections after that. Because these are the policies that truly make an impact in a positive way in people's lives. These are the policies that allow us to be the best humans that we can be, both at home and at work. And so I double down plus 1,000 to what everybody said. Call your member of Congress and know that you are powerful when you make that call. We're not just saying this to give you something to do. You actually are powerful when you make that call. So thank you in advance. And thank you again if you've already called once or twice or 20 times. Thank you.
Dawn.
You know, it's it's been a roller coaster of emotions the last couple of weeks, you know, righteous rage to joy to what I feel being with all of you, which is just such love. And at the end of the day, this is not just about negotiations and numbers and the jockeying and the intrigue. It's about, as you said, Ijana, it's about human life and it's about our stories. And this is why we're here. This is a moment to make history and we can't let it pass us by. I was thinking about my older brother, who was a mentor to me growing up, and we used to run together, and he would never let me stop. You know, when I got tired, he said, I'll wait with you, but then you keep going. And when you hit a hill, you sprint. So we are in the sprint. We need your help. Have hope, have joy, and keep fighting with us. So thank you.
Beautiful and perfect. What an incredible joy it is to work with these brilliant leaders. Thank you so much for this hour. And thank you to everyone at Netroots Nation for tuning in and taking action and staying hopeful and sprinting with us. It's the home stretch. And we got this. Thank you so much. And have a great weekend, Netroots.